Ephesians 6 says, we live in a spiritual battle. There's good, there's evil. If that is true, are we as human beings actually thinking about that when we approach different situations? A lot of the times we focus on what's in front of us, what's happening right now, but what is driving that? Sometimes it's free will, but sometimes it's something far more sinister and evil.
I'm here with Billy Hollowell of CBN News, and he's got a pretty interesting story. They're working on some cool things, angels and demons.
Yes, Angels and Demons, Investigating the Supernatural, Angels and Demons. It's our new film.
Yeah.
It comes out in March. We also have Investigating the Supernatural Miracles, which came out this past March. And so basically, we've traveled the country telling these incredible stories of miracles. And with Angels and Demons, are they real? From a Christian perspective, of course, we know they are. But what does that look like?
Yeah.
And so we investigated real life stories and brought them to life in the film.
Nice, nice. And so is it a show, movie? Is it a series?
It's a film series.
Film series.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's, a feature length film.
Yeah.
And it's got reenactments. It's got, real life stories, the real life people coming in, sharing what happened to them. And we felt it was important to tackle both angels and demons, right? Because often Hollywood talks about the demons, but they don't really talk about the angels. So we really went in scripturally to look at what does the Bible say and do these stories line up? And the viewer gets to make a decision after they see the story, whether or not they believe it's true.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you guys go and investigate this and talk to the people directly. What's the most wild thing that you've encountered?
Oh man. Every one of the stories is wild. When we worked on the miracles documentary, it really reframed the way that I thought about miracles. I said, oh, I believe in miracles. I'm a Christian, my whole life. But then really being confronted with people who were paralyzed, who can now walk again, who, had a brain tumor and it disappeared. When it came to angels and demons, a very similar dynamic of, okay, well, I know that people claim to have spiritual experiences. They claim that they've been oppressed, but what does that look like exactly? And so, I'll tell you one of the stories, Bruce Vanetta, he was trapped underneath a truck and he died essentially. The truck crushed him
Wow.
and he had a near death experience. But during that near death experience, he saw angels essentially pushing in on his body and protecting him. And, it's a very elaborate and long story, but it was very compelling. And one of the details, I'm a skeptic by nature, even though I'm a Christian. So it's like, well, prove it to me. Prove to me you had this thing happen. He was able, even though he was on the ground under this truck, to see the paramedics coming in the back door because he had risen above his body. And he could see them coming in. He could describe what they looked like and details he never would have been able to know had that not happened. So when you start to encounter those sorts of stories, you say, okay, if I'm a rational person, either he's making it up, which he can't be because the details are perfect, or what he said
Yeah.
is true.
Yeah, yeah. And are you seeing its commonality across the spectrum like that? Like out of body experiences, near death?
Yeah, the near death experiences for sure. We didn't hyper focus on, and his happened to have one.
Okay.
What we really did focus on was whether or not this spiritual dimension is true.
Yeah.
Ephesians 6 says, we live in a spiritual battle. There's good, there's evil, and everything that's happening is being impacted by that, right? So if that is true, are we as human beings actually thinking about that when we approach different situations? Whether we're talking about Charlie Kirk's death, whether we're talking about the news of the day, which is very dark. A lot of the times we focus on, oh, it's what's in front of us. It's what's happening right now. Okay, there's an element of that that's true, but what is driving that? Sometimes it's free will, but sometimes it's something far more sinister and evil. So we see that in these stories play out.
Yeah. And what kind of demonic things have you guys encountered?
Yeah. So that was one of the most interesting because a lot of times you'll hear people experience the demonic and it's lighter or it's and what I mean by lighter is it's oppression or it's something that they can expel very easily. But one of the stories we dealt with was a Satanist, a woman who actually worshipped Satan and saw power from him, which is a rarity. You don't hear a lot of those people out there.
Right.
They exist. And what happened to her being essentially overtaken, and we show this in the film, and she actually was dealing with a psychologist who was a bit of a skeptic, and he was brought in to look at her case, and he became a believer after experiencing
Wow.
many, many elements of her case, the ability to she could tell you what other people were doing other places. She could tell you, she was receiving information and it's a very tragic ending, to her life, which I won't give here. But really shows the dangers of you're really integrating oneself with evil in that way. It's truly a very real thing,
Yeah.
and we need to be aware of it. Now, most people are not worshiping Satan, right? But evil can still impact all of us in different ways if we allow it in.
Yeah. And there was some witchcraft stuff around Charlie's assassination, right? I heard some stories about that.
There was,
Yeah.
and this is always challenging because, you don't wanna give too much power to the enemy, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, when you have people actively invoking demons, because that's what it is, there's no good witchcraft, right? There's a lot of conversation, "Oh, there's white witchcraft." No, any witchcraft, the Bible's very clear, you don't engage with evil, you don't necromancy, trying to talk to the dead, you don't go to psychics, you don't do these things because you're engaging with evil. The Bible doesn't say it's not real, it says don't do it. And that's really interesting. So with Charlie's case, the idea that you had these witches who were on Etsy and they were being paid by people to place hexes on him, you know, this is a really complicated thing. I believe Christians are protected from evil. Now, that doesn't mean though that other people are protected from evil who are not saved, who are not Christians, right? So, that is I can't say for sure that had an impact, but when you
Sure.
look at the timeline,
Yeah.
it's a shocking timeline to say the least.
Right, right. And, how where could people find this?
Absolutely. So in March, this will come out, Ancients and Demons. You can find it at CBN News, CBN.com.
Yeah,
You can also go to supernaturalmovie.com and
yeah.
they'll be able to find it there. And if you go to supernaturalmovie.com right now, you can watch Investigating the Supernatural Miracles,
Yeah.
which is our first film in the series.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
For
it.
sure. God bless.